Welcome to Winston's Cellar. Relax, listen, enjoy. Apologies must be given to the tardiness of the latest input. Unforeseen assaults have begun upon the world of my order. The mercenaries we hired are dealing with the problem, so I digress. The current status of my order is irrelevant to my rendition of the second age of strife. The journal shall resume now, covering a topic of much mystique and intrigue. It has been generally assumed that Waaaaggh and his outriders, at the very start of this period, led all orcs in existence into epic conflict with the invincible forces of the new Devourer, and were utterly annihilated in a war involving trillions upon trillions of orcs and billions of new Devourer beasts, as Waaaagg's forces lunged from his superhighway in a veritable tide. Of course, it would be a sweeping generalization to conclude this was universally the case. Though any orcs directly fighting the new Devourer were utterly destroyed, along with their spore-borne reproductive systems, some of the more primitive, scattered and broken orc-infected worlds survived. These were the worlds too far from combat, where only scant traces of orcoid fungus remained. However, orcs are nothing if not tenacious. These light patches of growth eventually bred orcs and other variants of orcoid genus. Thus, scattered, primitive bands of feral orcs sprang up, along with the far more common Gretchen colonies. These orcs, however, were not the technologically advanced. I use the term loosely. Their technology was as ramshackle as it was genius, versions which terrorized the 41st millennium. They were mild local threats, often dwelling in deep forests or swamps, a semi-mythical menace on the borders of civilization and little else. In large numbers, they could perhaps overrun a small petty imperium if they gained the element of surprise, but little else. Of course, there was also the infamous Bolt Boy, a war boss who terrorized the world of Armageddon, using the cunning and knowledge unlocked in his alien mind via a bolter round to the brain. This war boss, upon sensing a call from Waaaaggh, the supposed dad of Gork and Mork, led his entire warband away from the Octavian system and the Armageddon system, and instead assaulted the maiden world of forced Katikaritiks, Hehet Mudastyron, or Pretty World to the orcs. Of course, the famous Yarrick, hero of Hades' Hive, and later hated butcher of Betek, but that shall be covered later, and a number of Black Templars pursued him every step of the way. However, eventually, the orcs' superior system of FTL, which didn't rely upon the Astronomicon, outpaced the Imperials, who became scattered by increasingly treacherous warp currents due to the dying Imperator of this period, as mentioned before. The Imperial crusade to hunt him was shattered, and the separate elements never reformed again. Some of the least damaged vessels limped back to Armageddon, while others were smashed in the warp or tossed to distant systems far away to be preyed upon and prey upon enemy shipping. Now back to the war boss. The few Exodites living upon the pretty Exodite world were slaughtered and eaten after a relatively short campaign. Once conquered, the war boss, Thraka, the head wound, led his boys against the Webway portals of the world, smashing the seals using brute force and psychic assaults by his weird boys. Soon his force had breached the Webway and began to travel inside the strange, almost frictionless realm. Corridors traveled to nowhere or took you back in time, or turned you insane. Passages were too small for a single orc to fit in, yet whole gargants tripped over inside them. Buggies lost all grip to the ground and crashed or smashed themselves to bits. Sometimes up wasn't up but sideways, and time seemed to slow and speed up at random. After he lost almost half his number, it was said Thraka gave a sensible order to his orcs. "Okay, lads, don't touch nothing, right?" With a newfound strange sense of caution, the orcs advanced. Many were the battles and wars they faced as they hopelessly wandered the Webway, battling Dark Eldar raids, Bieltan's strike forces, demons trapped within the warded labyrinth, or Ahriman's minions, who launched sorcerous blasts at the ragtag bands of orcs. Despite their caution, the labyrinth dimension still disoriented many, who wandered off on their own. Whole war bands and cults of speed were simply lost in the Webway. Some were killed, some continued to fight, oblivious to where they were. A good few orcs took wrong turns and stumbled into starship-sized Webway tunnels, only to be splattered by a passing Void Stalker or Eldar cruiser as they sped through the tunnels towards their destiny. Crystalline spiders became a very common foe who tested the orcs' combat prowess to the limit. They were regenerative, deadly, and could merge with the walls themselves. Yet despite all this anarchy throughout the labyrinth dimension, those orcs surrounding Thraka Headwound never seemed to get lost as they battle through the Webway, incorporating Wraithbone into their weapons as their devices broke or were exhausted by constant combat. Something was calling him across the realm. Dancing, colorful specters teased and drew the orcs forward, ever elusive to the mindless violence of their quarry. Waaaaggh was calling, Waaaaggh was listening. No evidence tells us what finally happened when the orcs met their supposed overgod. However, after that point, the sightings of orcs blundering around the Webway shrank to nearly zero. It is possible the God's Call was a ruse by the Harlequins, who then murdered the orcs. Yet this does not even come close to explaining why, on over 2,000 separate occasions, strange bulky shapes have emerged from the Webway and killed entire settlements across the galaxy seemingly at random, before returning to the Webway. These strange things are said to be 8 feet tall and covered with overlapping crystalline armor which glitters like organic flesh. Each being is said to be capable of flight and could fire devastating blue energy from bulky, sturdy weapons. Now, of course, these depictions could be of new wraith constructs or even simple fabrications by civilians with no concept of the strange beings of the universe. However, the fact these broad giants are led by frail, incredibly short beings similarly attired unnerves me, along with the insanely perfect discipline of these warriors. That and their war cries, which sound suspiciously like another race of warmongers. However, these chants are more disciplined and perfect, and the race's name is different. Is it possible? Could the green skins really have always been merely the degenerative offspring of these Journal shall resume in a few days. We must evacuate to a secure lower level and let the mercenaries deal with the problem. The foe should leave once our world passes under the glare of the blue star. For now, journal curtailed. We'll resume in approximately 4 Terran days.
We need assurances, Oda. We were promised results. Is the repulsion nearing completion?
They're more persistent than before. Had to drag almost half my hosts around to repel them this time. We couldn't have known artillery would become an issue.
It doesn't matter. We shall pay double if you can repulse them as soon as possible. Our vaults are sealed. They can't get in, but my brethren need reassurances. Oda. Order. Order.
Understood. Odor out.